Hey guys, it's DVD Gamer Girl here. Welcome back to my channel. So recently I made a video on if I think that the Baldur's Gate 3 companions would survive without Tav. And honestly, that got me thinking about a couple of different scenarios. And one of the primary situations that came to mind is what if we don't recruit Shadowheart? Because arguably, I feel like Shadowheart is one of the most important companions because she is the one who initially has the astral prism. And I was very curious, like if you try to avoid Shadowheart at all costs, like what exactly happens? I went all the way through Act 3 just to see like how long Shadowheart appears for and what happened. So starting in the Nautiloid, the first thing that I did was I just ignored her in the pod. Like she was all like, let me out. I looked at her, completely ignored her and moved on with just Lae'zel, and we got out, we crashed the Nautiloid. When I landed on the Ravaged Beach, the first thing I noticed is that Shadowheart was not in her usual spot. Like if you free her from the pod and she basically escapes from there and crashes with you at the same time, I feel like she lands pretty close to you because you guys are close in proximity, I guess. If you don't free her, she actually is not in that usual spot. I kept walking along the beach and then I saw her at the door that enters, the dank crypt, where normally you would find withers. And she was just kind of banging on the door and trying to get in. I did speak to her there. I was a little worried if this would force me to recruit her, but thankfully it didn't. You basically just have a conversation and she's like, well, I can't get in here. And then you can suggest, oh, maybe, you should go around the mountain. And then you have a couple of options of whether you want to team up with her or not. But at this point, you can still just choose to leave, say, well, I'm going my own way, good luck type of thing. I thought it was interesting here because it does show basically that it seems like she killed a couple of those little brains by herself.
Hopefully there's no more of these creatures along the way. Likewise. Try killing a couple of these monsters before you die. Lessens the load for me.
So she is definitely capable to some degree of survival. At least she got that far. And she tells you to be careful and then you kind of go your own ways. She ran off, so I was trying to follow her, but then she just disappeared, which I guess it makes sense. You can't actually follow her through. But I was kind of curious to see if she would get into that little fight with the brains that you encounter first right off the beach. But, it seemed like she kind of avoided that. Anyways, so then I went on to recruit Astarion, Gale, and Lae'zel. And then I went through the Grove fight and I entered the Grove. Next, there I saw Shadowheart. She was just kind of chilling on a rock next to the strange ox. And she was, looking at her artifact, trying to figure out what to do with it. It's kind of funny because she's like, are you following me? When she sees you again. And she just basically, you guys establish that you're there for the same thing, to look for a healer. Again, you can kind of say that you want to team up, but you don't have to. So I just left her there again. After that, I carried on doing a whole bunch of stuff. I did Kaga stuff, I did Zevlor stuff. And then I think the next thing I tried to do was go to the Goblin camp. When you go to the Goblin camp without recruiting Shadowheart, she actually shows up there because as you enter the Goblin camp, the presence of the Absolute starts to get stronger. You hear the voice of the Netherbrain basically speaking to you and it's telling you to help it find the prism. Then when Shadowheart shows up, she's like, look, I protected you. I'm so glad I found you when I did, because it kind of pushes the voice and influence of the Absolute out of your head because obviously the prism is the protection. And then Shadowheart at this point really starts to be very strong on we should team up, you need me, you really need me. And if you ask her, you have the artifact, so why do you need me? She basically says, the Githyanki are after me, the Absolute's forces are after me, everybody wants this prism, So I need help. I need protection as well. And in return, I can basically help protect you with this prism. So, you know, it's a very logical decision for her. Like, obviously she needs help. She's not going to really be able to survive on her own with all these people going after whoever has the artifact. So it makes sense. At this point, she's very, very adamant about teaming up with you. And if you still tell her, you know, clear her off, I don't want anything to do with you, I don't want anything to do with the prism, she says, you know, I would really, really suggest that you reevaluate that. And I'm going to wait here until you make up your mind, basically.
There's no chances without me. Only certain death or worse. I'll wait here until you come to your senses. For both our sakes, I hope that happens very soon.
So she starts to sound a little bit annoyed and frustrated at this point that you guys still have not teamed up, but again, you can leave her behind here. After this, I went into the goblin camp. I defeated all of the, you know, goblin bosses, and then I came back out, and then Shadowheart was basically still waiting there on the bridge, and I talked to her again, and she basically said the same thing, like, have you changed your mind? I said no, and then she was annoyed with me again and basically was like, I'll wait here again. So honestly, this is actually the last time that I saw Shadowheart. I was doing more stuff along the way in Act 1, like I recruited Karlach, I got some, you know, Will and Mazoracine, and then suddenly at some point in Act 1, the artifact just came to me in camp. It's like you recognize that it's the artifact from Shadowheart, but it just comes to you automatically. I didn't fight her for it, I didn't do anything, I didn't even see her again. I just got the artifact in my hands just magically, like it came to me away from Shadowheart. I don't know what happened to Shadowheart, like at this point. I've seen a couple things say online that occasionally you can encounter her in either the Mountain Pass or the Underdark, but I think that happens if you go into those areas before the artifact comes to you. I'm not entirely sure, but again, she basically just tries to get you to recruit her, and you can either just leave her behind or you can fight her for it, you know, at that point, which we could have also done on the Goblin Bridge, is just attack her and get the artifact from her at that point, but then she's dead. The point of this playthrough for me was to see how far she actually survives, like if I don't like kill her for the artifact and I also don't recruit her. So, you know, by the end of Act 1, I have the artifact in hand, so I entered Act 2. I was very curious if I was going to find Shadowheart anywhere in Act 2. I will say I did not see her anywhere in Act 2. I went to the Gauntlet of Shar. I freed the Night Song by myself. I did not see Shadowheart there. I think it would have been really cool if she was actually at the Gauntlet of Shar, because, you know, my theory is I feel like if she was alone, she would have gone to the Gauntlet of Shar, but I guess she like really doesn't. Then I was pretty sure that Shadowheart was pretty much done for. Like, I don't think I would see her again in the playthrough. But I decided to go into Act 3 and see what happens in House of Grief, because I have never seen anybody talk about what happens in House of Grief. If you haven't recruited Shadowheart at this point, what happens with Viconia and what happens with Shadowheart's parents. So I did ultimately end up going to House of Grief with my party. If you don't have Shadowheart with you, you can pay for, you know, a mapping of the heart, as they call it. So I paid for that. Viconia basically did a mapping of the heart for me. She said I have a heart full of rage, which I was kind of low-key giving like kind of realistic answers on, you know, the questions that they were asking. So I don't know. I don't really feel like I'm a rageful person, but okay. Anyways, after that, if you say you want their help, they do let you into the inner layer. So I went inside there, and then there, you know, I spoke to Viconia more. She basically found out that we have the artifact. Like she said, when she did the mapping of the heart, she knew everything about you, all your secrets, and she knows that you have the artifact. So she was really trying to press you for that. So obviously, you know, I was saying I'm not giving her the artifact, but interestingly, at this point, I got the option to tell her, I won't give you the artifact, but I'll give you Shadowheart, which is like so weird because I didn't even have Shadowheart at this point. Like I didn't have Shadowheart in my party, obviously, but you still get the option to say, I will give you Shadowheart instead of the artifact. And you get this option when, you know, Viconia kind of reveals that Lady Shar had kind of compelled her to prepare Shadowheart to take over as Mother Superior. So Viconia has like a resentment against Shadowheart because Shadowheart is intended to replace her, you know, so she really doesn't like Shadowheart.
I will not be replaced by Shadow.
You suddenly realize what has been troubling her. Shah has rewarded her loyalty by forcing her to groom her own replacement. Shadowheart.
Go. Fetch her. And should you not stay true to your word, well...
Anyways, so once I told her I'll give you Shadowheart, because I was just curious what would happen if it maybe a quest would pop up where it would show me where Shadowheart is in Act 3 and I could go find her. I got this quest in my journal to recruit Shadowheart, but I couldn't find her anywhere. She doesn't exist anywhere. I'm pretty sure at this point she's not in the game, so like I don't really understand why this like quest even exists where you can tell her, oh, I'll bring you Shadowheart when you have never recruited Shadowheart. What I've heard is that if, you know, Shadowheart was in your party before at some point and permanently left, or if you killed her or something, at this point, you know, the only options are, oh, Shadowheart is already dead, and then you basically like fight for the artifact or something like that. But in this case, you know, like it's kind of like bugged out because it doesn't consider Shadowheart to be dead. I mean, I don't know what this means. I kind of personally would like to take it as that Shadowheart is still alive somewhere, but you're never able to find her anymore. I did go around like the city looking for her. I couldn't find her anywhere. I just don't think she's even there. But I just thought it was interesting that this quest exists. It kind of seems like an oversight on the part of the developers that you can get to this point without ever recruiting or killing Shadowheart and talk to the Mother Superior, and, you know, then you get this quest, but you can't do anything with it. It's very weird. So ultimately, you know, I did end up fighting Viconia because I couldn't find Shadowheart and I wanted to get to her parents. Basically, when you arrive at her parents without Shadowheart, you don't even know those are her parents. So Tab and, you know, the other companions are like, I wonder who these prisoners are, type thing.
This just moved. It must be linked to the offerings on the altar.
What's been done to them? Need to stay strong. Need to shut out the pain. Shut out everything.
Tired. So tired.
And you can't even really talk to the parents. Like, they just say some, you know, basic, like, canned dialogue. Like, you don't actually talk to them. It's like you're basically just hearing their thoughts or they're speaking out loud type thing. So I thought that was really interesting. Like, it's very, very underwhelming without Shadowheart. But yeah, and then I just never see Shadowheart again. So, you know, is she still lost somewhere in the world of Baldur's Gate? I mean, maybe she is. Maybe she died at some point. Maybe the Gith got her. Maybe the Absolute's forces got her. But it never says, and you never see her dead body. I've heard that if you don't recruit some of the other companions, like eventually you do see what happens to them. Like you find Lae'zel, I think, dead somewhere in the Shadowlands. Astarion is like a zombie, like at Cazador or something like that. So you see actually what happens to them. But I feel like with Shadowheart, you never actually get the finality of like what happens to her, which I thought was kind of interesting. Anyways, let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions on what you think happens to Shadowheart. I'd be really interested in hearing your theories. I would also really love if you guys join my Discord server. I do have it available as a perk if you become a channel member. Even at the lowest tier, Discord server access is one of the perks. If you guys ever want to join as a channel member, that would really help me out. If not, that's totally okay. I'll still always be posting here for you guys and talking to you in the comments. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy my content. I hope you guys are having a great week, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.